Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I think at this very moment you should be seeing me live. Actually, let me confirm. And that's the case. I'm looking like a fool in front of a large audience, which is pretty normal. This will be an animation panel that I think I'm gonna do a bit differently from usual, because usually what I would do is that I would go with showing previous work, opening up the files and trying to explain a bit. I want to do something a bit different, which is a bit ironic because I would usually go on panels called Animating Live, where the event would be live, but the animating wouldn't be. And that's what happens when you have an hour to explain everything. So what I want to cover a bit is just a shot in Toon Boom Harmony with some characters and if you hear no voice, I've been told that I have sound, so okay. So this will be a panel where instead of going back on previous projects and trying to basically show how they were done, what I will do is that I will cover a shot I'm working on right now and actually show a bit of the work. So this is a shot where actually it's set in the future where you have it's not the future of the finale of the show. It's a bit farther behind. So you have Dinky, who's already who became a mare. She has a cutie mark. You have Amethyst Star, and you have Derpy. Sorry, Muffins. And the shot is very simple. You have the characters. It's raining. And you have Amethyst Star who's walking. You have Dinky who's, she's still a bit youthful and she has that little strut because she's trying to run inside, even though she has, and it's really stupid, she has a shield with magic to cover herself. And Stream Room just had are you talking about a real fire? Oh, I hope not. Anyway, so obviously I only have an hour, so I cannot really explain everything. I don't want to cover, I don't want to cover too much in depth. I will only cover a bit the compositing, a bit the character animation. So nothing is final, nothing is expected to be final. So what you have here is a layout where I actually made I took the render of the plate back from After Effects, which was based on this 3D render, and it's pretty interesting. I'll talk a bit more about that. It's mostly just a camera spinning around a point. One thing that I really want to point out is how important it is, if you have a camera that spins around an object, do not just keep a camera from one position looking at one point and then for another one, because instead of actually having the actual rotation, what you're going to have is just going back from one point to the other, kind of like going a linear track. So having an actual point in space here, that this one that's actually set to rotate, is a lot more effective. That way you can keep a constant distance. So yeah, and just getting a message. Oh, yeah, I am in game in Ponytown. And yeah, sorry, Ponytown. Doing Ponytown and doing panels at the same time is a bit of a nightmare. So yeah. So what's interesting here is that so with Toon Boom Harmony, if you have characters, you have the whole assembly. For example, I have Amethyst Star who's there, and I can actually move that assembly around. So what I'm gonna do is, because it's quite interesting, she's at a position where the legs don't really show, so I don't really have to worry too much about the legs as she's walking. And am I moved? Oh, okay, this is screenshot worthy. And there we go. Going back to main chat. There we go. So let's create a new peg, and I'll show you a bit because I was talking earlier about the idea of curving. The bridge itself here that you can see is actually a proper curve instead of being a linear path with a bit of a curve for style. So if I were to animate a character whose position is here and starts here, and then I rotate it, you'll see pretty quickly the problem that you get. You can see that the character sinks in because she's actually going on a linear path. So what I'm gonna have to do to just ensure that does not happen, and it's pretty cool because Flash has a problem with that. But if I go and I take the center of rotation of that, which should be set like this, keep it keyed. I'm going to keep it keyed like that. And then I can actually rotate. There we go. And I can actually have the character just walking at that speed. That's not actually the final speed. Toon Boom has that thing where, unlike... don't do that. Unlike modern video games, Toon Boom basically has the highest quality settings set for that. There's no optimization, so if you want to look at the scene, you have to play it once and play it again at the actual speed. You have in a corner, you have here the actual speed. It's kind of hard to see in my stream, and I'm pretty sure if you look at it on Ponytown, it's going to be even harder because there's pixelization. It's part of the style, but trust me on that. And that number can actually give you the actual frame rate. Back when people were doing animation with on paper, they had to guess the frame rate, and just having that here to get the actual speed of the animation is a lot better. Here there's no sound, but if, for example, if you do some lip syncing, you're gonna have a lot less trouble to just preview it once, go back, enable the sound, and then get a good idea of what it sounds like without it. So you have those 2 points, and in this case, and I mean that's kind of obvious, if you have if you travel a distance within a set amount of time, if you double the time, the speed is going to be decreased. So that's what you can do with the keyframes. So you can actually have the character just going from that position to the other slower. So and that's how you get this. That's only the blocking. I don't actually. And if I go with Dinky, who's going to have her own. Actually, I guess I could actually just duplicate it. Node duplicates selected node. And Dinky, for some reason, is named as Starlight Glimmer. Nope. Here's a better pony. And there we go. So in this case, as she's connected to the same peg, she should, and that's not the case at all because the proper center of rotation is the wrong one, but here we go. Now this should be working, and of course, what am I supposed? Yeah. So then I can go and put her a bit higher. And it's quite interesting. The render, if you look at it, you can see that the matte is not matching with the actual background. And what I did, which was really simple, was just to draw the shape of the part would be covered. And the reasoning was very simple. That way I don't have to animate stuff that is out of the frame, because things that are out of the frame are, well, I mean, nobody's going to see them, unless, for example, you have the character who casts a shadow. In this case, that makes sense, or in reflections, but in this present case, the bridge, just the shape of the bridge covers the legs, which in my case will make it a lot easier to animate the legs, as you don't see the hooves, the way they connect. So you only have to worry about the fact that they actually get the movement that works, and not worry about the fact that it touches at the proper point. And oh right, that's why I can't do that. So you have Dinky, who has here a piece that actually reverts the order. Well, that's actually just mirroring on the other side. And if I put it the other direction, I'm gonna have to do this like that, which should be, yep, there we go. So I have this, which rotates against, yeah, it rotates against the right one, and what I'm gonna do, create a peg underneath to raise her up. Oh wait, no, I'm not doing the right one. Yeah, there we go. So the reason why she was sinking in was that her position was also keyed. You have the position on screen and you have the rotation as two separate settings, and you're going to create keys for the two of them at the same time. So having access to both of them like that is a lot more effective. So what you can do now is that, as I said earlier, you have the speed that so you have, and the way that the shot is planned is that you have Dinky, who's supposed to be running faster. Well, she's supposed to be more on a happy trot. The reference that I had for the move was something a bit like this kind of trot, where you actually see the body go up and down. So if I go with that, go with this like this, and then you can have, and just the fact that they're keyed separately like this, you can actually have this. And the idea is that once she stops, she's gonna turn because she sees that her big sister is a bit farther behind. She's not too concerned because of course she has the magic cover. So let's go with this. And let's disable the sound, even though there's no sound in the clip, so disabling the sound is kind of redundant. But doing it by default, if in some cases you have characters just talking. So you have this right now, and what I'm going to animate later is that you don't just stop right there. You have depending on how you actually stop, you might just, for example, try to jump and then kind of stop at some kind of angle like that. You might have a movement where you either stop by slowing down, so you have, or you have a kind of stop where you go a bit too fast and then you try to stop at that point and then you have that slow down. And in some cases, depending on how you try to stop, you might have some rebound. For example, you have you try to stop by holding on something, and then your arms stretch, and then you try to go back to try to hold it, or you try to I don't know, a spring. So doing it like that is a lot. You know, it's a lot on the way that you want to portray the tone of the animation. The fact that you have here Dinky who's bouncing around, I might have some kind of bounce back as she realizes that Amethyst Star is still a bit behind. So something like that. Oh, and while I'm there, I didn't animate Derpy yet. So her animation is just, and the idea is that she can fly, so she does. And the idea is that you have the clip of the wing, and the way I was picturing the shot was that she would only fly with one wing and use her other one to try to cover her head. And I can see here, it's a kind of the flaw with the rig that I have is that there's this wing here, which is the folded one. There's no animation on that, and it's a bit lighter. But there's also the animation for the wing that actually moves, which is just a cycle. And with the show, they also do that, except in rare occasions where you have the wings that just go up and down, and the way it actually flaps. And if you look at that, you can actually see it curve, and then it curves in the other direction. mostly just because it actually helps to convey a bit better the idea of that it actually pushes air around. So what I can do, instead of deleting that drawing layer, because I don't like to delete stuff in case I need it again, I just unplug it like that, and that's it. I can also do that for this one, and so I have this wing, which is the this animation, and I think it should be looping perfectly, so I can grab this, copy it, and Toon Boom, the way it actually behaves is that when you copy a cycle, it only copies references. You don't actually have to copy the same drawings twice, so you can actually have that cycle like that. So, and there we go. So wait, if you look back at the animation, I thought it didn't. I unplug this one. There we go. And then you can do is that you can take the wing, which field doesn't go with the proper angle. Take this, rotate it a bit, and there we go. For the legs, I have separate image, separate drawing layers for the leg that is in the still position and in a bent one. And the reasoning is that the bent one is made of multiple parts, and can grab this. If I want to have the actual, if I want to rotate this part, I can actually rotate it like that, and then grab it like that. Actually, it's kind of funny. Back in the days when the Pony Creator was all the craze, you had that option, which was kind of a weird mix between that kind of way to modify hooves and well, basically the front one. And I thought, well, it's pretty cool. You can actually rotate those pieces and actually have characters, you know, move their hooves. And it wasn't perfect, but it actually encouraged me to try to make that on my own as well with Flash. Oh, and think about that. That's kind of an annoying thing with my rig. It is kind of broken. The you actually have the those pieces that are actually just references to the original one. So you'd move one and it would move the other one, like it would be stuck like that. There we go. So now I can actually move this, and in that case, just to make it a bit less stiff, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to change a bit the position of the other leg to try to make it more relaxed. And it also helps because you see a bit better the other leg in context, so I can actually have something like that. Usually I draw the piece, but for the context of what I need here, it's not really necessary. I can actually have something like this. There we go. And the back legs, the way that they're set is a bit different. It uses deformers and with bones, so you can actually have a piece that actually moves like that. It's not perfect, but for my needs, if you go with some piece like that. So you have the hoof that instead of just staying like that, kind of like when you have a leg that just try to stand like that when you are staying. When you go, for example, in your bed and you're laying, instead of going in straight angle, it's going to relax a bit, and you're thinking if you I don't know, you're pulled, the leg is going to basically just try to relax at a more reasonable angle. So trying to do that with the hoof as well, like that, also really helps. I can have this like that, and like this. And it's also a flaw with that rig. There's no deformer for the back leg for some odd reason. So no duplicate. I can actually duplicate that one, get it, and plug it to a composite node, which basically handles everything. I can take this, grab it like that, and since I did the duplicate instead of a copy, I can have this, and like this. And of course you have the body, like the wings are a bit closer to the front one, so the front of the body is going to be, also it's kind of weird because the wings are connected to the back for some reason, but having the back of the body a bit more relaxed, and also I need a kinematic output, so that way it actually, instead of deforming the wing with the deformer, it just it's simply going to be stuck to this position. So I take this, and there we go. You no longer have that deformation. Also, the piece of the main, which is layered in the wrong order, it should be, and should be connected to this, which is also set to 3D, where it's actually composite nodes. You have, instead of having all the layering that is done by when you set it to 2D, it actually layers it according to how it's plugged. If you set it to 3D, what it's going to do, it's going to look at the position in 3D space of the piece. And if you have some characters with some weird pose, you might end up with something that you don't want to be like that. So it's more effective like that. I'm going to cover a bit with the tail a bit later. I'm going to move it a bit up. And I'm not going to rotate the head yet. I'm going to show a neat feature with Toon Boom. It's called a shake node. And what you're going to do is that you're going to plug it right with the animation. Lower the frequency. I'm going to go with 1 or 10. 5, 1. And what it does is that it creates a noise, something that the computer can figure out on its own. So it's kind of random. It's random but predictable. And what it does is it's going to add some shake. And definitely too much. 2. There we go. And it already creates, and the reasoning here is that the wings, the way that they behave, is that they might flap up and down at a constant speed, but the air around it is a bit less consistent in density, and you have wind around, and each flap is a bit different. So having something that has that little shake like that really helps. And of course it doesn't flow with the speed of the wing, so what I can do is I can create a shake that goes at a very slow speed, and maybe a bit too slow, 3, and I can actually have that. And since pegs, what they do is that the way that they're plugged is that one actually influences the other one. Think of it like you plug something in something else, and if you unplug the first one, it affects the second one, but not the other way around. So I can have this. I'm going to create a key here. I'm going to take a position where she has the wing in that frame. Should be this frame, I think. So let's compare. Wait. And this frame. There we go. Right. A bit too early. There we go. So I have this frame, I have this frame, and I have this frame, and the idea is that when she flaps it down, I want the body to react by going up. So I can take this, I translate it up, delete this keyframe, and then I can go, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a knees. There's a button to create it automatically, and what it does is that if you look at the graph in the ground, well, let's say around view, reset zoom. Oh, wait, did I? Seriously. I hope it's not crashing. I'm not touching anything. Sometimes it will just stop responding out of nowhere. So, and doing it live is really frustrating. Yeah, if it breaks, what I'm going to do is just restart it. It's not the end of the world. And also, the chat is kind of silent. I was kind of expecting questions, unless... Okay. Yeah, I think it just crashed live on stage, which is something that happens. It's... I mean, that's the reality of doing that, and that's why I recommend people to save often. It's pretty good because I have a good idea of what I was doing, and yeah, basically as crazy as that. It's and actually, I guess while this is crashing, I can cover a bit, because I was talking earlier about the fact that it was not doing the actual compositing in Toon Boom. Toon Boom actually gets to be able to do that, and also After Effects is also freezing. Okay, that's one of the things that happen with... well, what that means is that I can go and task and just restart it, which happens, and can shut this down. After Effects, still frozen, and yeah, that happens. I could lose my mind and scream obscenities that I would never dare to say in front of my mom, which is quite saying considering the fact that my mom is pretty laid back when it comes to that. So that happens when things crash. It's I'm thinking because I don't see a lot of equivalent with real world. Like you can do like it's like if I was painting. Actually, I can compare it to the real world. Like if I was painting something very carefully, and then someone just came by my shop, took my painting, threw it at the wall, and told me that I had to deal with it. All right. Yeah, it looks like Harmony has broken my ability to click another software, because I think it just had an overlay over top of After Effects, which broke it, which means that Harmony actually broke. It actually made another app crash, which is quite interesting. There's actually a perspective shift in that one. The plan is simply to actually compensate for that, because it's very minimal for the fact that they actually move. So where's DH? Derpy Hooves. And that's an older animation because I didn't get to animate it yet. I can actually show you a bit the way that it's kind of done, although the wings are also not part of the outline pass. So I have the pass for the character, and what I can do is I can actually bring it to my plate like this. I grab it like this and I throw it here, and also it was in that position, so actually I guess I can what are my specs? It's a Ryzen 9 with 32 gigs of RAM, an RX 570, which is not very good, but well, it's pretty decent if you have nothing. But with the if you look, for example, the fact that you have the cards like the 3080, it's nowhere near as comparable. And the actual issue that I have is not really that it can't handle a scene, because it has a lot of video memory, as some people call VRAM. But the problem is that, oh nice, I did a save recently enough, and so shake, gotta reduce to 0.05. Okay, we didn't lose a lot. So also I only have wasted a half an hour to do that. So how long I've been doing animation? So back in the days, I actually started in 2008, and do you remember the PSP? The PSP was pretty cool, because it was basically, I mean, think of something of that size that could actually play video games. You could put music, you could put movies, you could put photos. I even had the webcam you could plug on top to try to take photos. And one thing I found out pretty early on is that you could actually run Flash applications, because the browser that they used supported Flash. And the first thing I thought was, I'm not very good at programming things, so I'm thinking, well, could I use that to try to make my own games? And so I tried Flash, because I could actually load them. It was pretty limiting with Flash, because the web browser would crash if anything took more than 1.5 megs of memory, which is weird, because the console, the base one, had 32 megs of memory, and it turns out that they were not even using all of that. So I realized that I could at least try to make my own very simple stuff. I took my dad had a book on Flash where it covered a lot of things, and there was a very simple game where you played as someone throwing a pie at a clown. And I realized, well, let's try to modify it, and I tried to go around the code to try to make something unique out of it. And I had fun, so I ended up trying to do my own animations, and that's kind of encouraged me to go with Flash. And Flash is kind of limited. Here, that's the rig where everything that bends could not be done with the deformer. You had to go with, and all you had was you could translate, you could rotate, you could skew. Well, you could scale, and you could skew, and that was it. That's kind of why the show, the show has had their own ways to actually make it feel like less stiff. For example, to make it less stiff, you can look, for example, the walk cycles. All the frames are hand-drawn, or I say hand-drawn. They actually use shape tweens with actual shapes where you actually had to revector with a very specific angle and actually go and key those shapes to get those movements. And you have some following movement with the body, and then you have the head. And the head doesn't just go up and down as the legs as they move. It actually goes in a circle. Oh yeah, I can't. There we go. And if you look at the head movement, it actually goes counterclockwise. And if you look at them going in front, you have the like that in an upside down V position. And you also have, for example, the wings. Amethyst Star is a unicorn, and I just had the rig where the wings are still there. But you have the wings that go up at their own pace, and you have the body, and each part has their own flow. So it might be pieces that don't deform, but it feels like it's deforming because it kind of acts. Think of it like a chain. Like each link of the chain is very rigid, but the fact that they're all linked together makes it feel like a rope. And that's kind of the way that they got to animate characters. So all of that is very effective, and that's something I learned a bit too late, and I was relying a bit too much to try to make it feel less stiff on the bounce back. And I try also to animate characters' manes to actually flow like hair. So yeah. So going back, what was my inspiration with my OC? So it's really stupid, but I realized I was looking at OCs back in 2013, and we didn't really know much how to make a good original character. This position. Okay, so 1, 2. There we go. The timing is purple. And I realized you have vinyl scratch, which is white and blue and light blue, which, it's colors that work well and the sticking. Would green and white flow well, since there's not, I couldn't find at the time any character in the show that had that palette. And I was thinking, well, let's go with that. That's unique, and ended up with the blue eyes because it felt right at that part of the color wheel. And then I realized later, this is kind of a joke to people who do chroma keying, because you cannot go on a green screen, you cannot go on blue screen, especially with the bow that she has. So she's kind of a nightmare to work with films. Anyway, so I have this, which I copied, and save. So you have her in a position where she actually goes up and down. And I also did this, and there we go. Also added this. Sometimes it's really stupid. You have to go with a scroll wheel and scroll like that, just to set from one to the other. And then you have the function, which actually behaves like a sine wave, or at least very close to sine wave. What you can do also is that you go with that, and for example, if you want it, because you really feel like she moves up a bit too quickly, so you can copy it back one cycle, 1, 2, and what you're going to have is that you're going to have some delay with that to actually give some kind of momentum, and doesn't feel right. Can I go with 1 frame less? And there we go. And I'm going to reduce the shape node to 1, 1, 1. Here in X, Y, Z. There's also the Z-axis, because I wanted to at least give some depth. It's pretty useful to use that depth, even though it's pretty flat shot like that. So I got this, and also what I can do afterwards is that since it's a set of pegs like that, I can go and create a new peg that moves like this. Go from that position to also it's going to be set like this and set like that. So also I'm going to ease out this so it feels like it's slowing down. So you can actually have, there we go. Yeah, I only have an hour, so I don't want to go too much in depth with that. There we go. And what I can do now is that I can export and render. I start from frame 100 instead of going with frame 1, and the reasoning is that all the mouths, the idea was that I didn't want to have to recreate the blend shapes, well, the deformers for all the positions, because all those deformers make very distinct phonemes, kind of like what you have with let's go with this angle, because the show, instead of having to redraw each frame or having to do some kind of convoluted mouth system, is that you go with specific ones. So what I did with Deformers is that I actually replicated that, and I had to put them somewhere, and Toon Boom doesn't really have that thing where you can just hide it. And so I decided, well, let's start at frame 100. Nobody's gonna really know about that. It's also what you do in the industry, although they start with frame 1000, just to be sure, with frame with 3D animation. And what the reason why they go with frame 1000 is that if they have clot simulation, if I have this and have it modeled with very specific pose, it's going to be modeled for a pose like this, like a real, either an A pose or a T pose. So you're gonna have to go from that to the actual position. It's not really the reasoning why I'm doing that for 2D, but for them, they actually do that, and that way you can actually have the clot that actually goes with the actual position, since you have to simulate it. Video games they're probably not going to go with that. They're actually just going to follow the actual rig and maybe have some bones, if you have, for example, a cape. But in this case, I just put it as a repository, I guess, for all the mounts. So you have the happy ones, you have the sad ones, and since they're deformers, you can actually go from one to the other more dynamically than just trying to make them go very fast. So yeah, my favorite part of animating, let's actually cover it right now, since I'm so let's launch the render for the nodes that I have right now. So 100 to 350. So I have this. I'm just gonna render the first few frames because actually it might be a bit slower since I'm feeling a bit stupid with that. But OBS I always set to actually do the conversion on CPU instead of GPU. I don't have the best GPU, so I don't know if it might compare it. Alright, so rendering, I have the characters, and let's reload. Oh yeah, I'm not touching any key on the keyboard. I have the modifier keys like Shift, Control, and Alt as side buttons on my mouse. It's the best thing ever. So if you have that and you want to do that, so yeah, you have the character who's there, and so you have Derpy, and what I would like to do is, because I want to match the lighting, I'm just going to start with matching the lighting of the sky like this. So I have this, and it's kind of cheap. It's a wide shot, so I'm not really too concerned about that kind of detail. But I go with, I start and I just offset the render like this. I set it to alpha inverted matte, and that way I actually get the rim light, and that way I can actually just move it like that. And this, I can actually go curve, make it a bit darker. I just want the color, or at least a hint of the color. There we go. And then I can actually see if it matches. And that's actually released back when I was working on a Project Thundercloud 1 and 2. The mistake I did was that for shadows I always set it at like 50%. And I didn't realize that I would have, instead, to match the way the shadows would look in the plate itself, because I was thinking, well, I mean, wouldn't shadows be usually the same brightness? So there we go, and one, and there we go. And it sort of looks okay. It's not perfect, but I have a position here, and then there's my cheat sheet. Where I kind of forgot yet again to do the I forgot yet again to do the if I want some ambient occlusion, I can just take the layer that is just the outline and nothing else, set it like this. I can set it to subtract, and the idea is that you do matte with colors. So you subtract, you go with 2, and also there's some weird artifacts on the sides, so you go with that, stencil, and still kind of artifacty, because I'm going a bit too far and I'm actually clipping the values. Like I can actually look at that and try and find the right corner. Okay, it's not as bad. Sometimes the colors are literally going to be negative. It's more dark than pure black, which is probably not scientifically possible. Although it might be revealed in the future that it can, and it's going to blow up. because I'm taking black hole, but the black hole is supposed to be absorbing light. Well, basically trying to bend it, not actually having light that subtract light around it. It's kind of funny because you can actually have, thanks to the fact that we use computers, we can actually do 3D renders of things where the light source is actually negative. So things in its shadow are going to be brighter than things affected by that light. So there we go. And there's the eyes where, and it's one of those things that passes the fact that you can have a render where you have separate things. So with the shading, I can actually have go with channel, shift channel. I'm going to put another beauty pass underneath. I only isolate because each channel is a separate color. So I can have here the red, set it to alpha, and it's no longer affected. There we go. Did I set it properly? Yeah. And red is for all of the eye, so that way I can actually affect the brightness of everything or nothing. In this case, I want a bit of this. I'm gonna go with this red, green. The green is the shine, on the bottom. So I can go set the opacity. That way I can actually have the eyes that look a bit, reflective. Because if I look back at animations like Luna's Determination, the problem that I had is that the eye was basically, since it was just considered just a white spot, and I added some shadows on top of that. Like here, the white spot is supposed to be white, so I can actually go with blue, and actually have the spot is brighter than what it would be if there was it was all covered shadows. Don't make it pure white either, because I don't want to. So there we go, and I have this, and now we're going with the very fancy one. If I go with emit a star, so with her, and the problem is that I want to layer her behind it. I go with, and I can go and take a Z-depth pass. Z-depth pass, basically it's the brightness of it. If you look in the corner, which is covered my face, sorry. Actually, I'm gonna go with the exposure so you can properly see it. The brightness of it corresponds to the distance of that pixel according to the camera. So if I lower the brightness like that, I can actually have the proper thing, and I can go. And what I will do now is that I actually have that. I can extract it with keying extract, and I go with this. There we go. And now it's going to be behind her. And the problem is that it takes the absolute value of that pixel, which I don't recommend. So, and it's a bit of a cheat. It's called morphologic anti-aliasing. And this way it smooths out the pixels. And now that I have a matte that I can use that actually goes what is behind and that's in front, I can take that, set it to alpha matte, reversed. There we go. And she's behind it now. And I can then do the same thing. Take that part, add Dinky, which, oh yeah, SG for Starlight Glimmer, because Dinky is based on a Starlight Glimmer rig. And also I kind of forgot to do that, but her eyes in the actual final render are green, which is not the right one, and I'll be able to fix that. So I can go with this. And I remember when I was talking about how I did the shading for Derpy. So since I used those passes, I can take this, and I might need some tweaks because Derpy has a very grayish color, but I can take this, select all the beauty layers, because there is a beauty, an outline pass, and an eye pass. Take this, hold with Alt, in this case beauty, and it's called beauty. It's not beautiful, it's just the idea of everything that's set, all the layers with the original setup. It's a 3D term, so I just transfer it like this. I have this, which is already decent. I have the eyes, so I select with Control, grab those, grab the eyes, and in theory, there we go. You already have the pop with the eye shine. And then I take the outline pass, this, and I have the faux ambient occlusion, which is a bit greenish, which is not the end of the world, but it doesn't look the best, and I can delete. I'm gonna save. They're supposed to be using magic. I don't think I'm gonna have much time to actually cover how I'm doing magic for that, but so I have this, and I have this for Dinky as well. So beauty, 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 beauty. Grab them, all of them. It's not the best approach because using that, if I do changes, I'm gonna have to then backport it, or I just recopy that and just change the files. But I have this save, and I have my render, which is like this. Although I say like this, but there's a couple of other factors. There's one that I didn't think of talking about. The blur that is given to the characters is done in post. The reasoning is that there's two approaches. There's called pre-jittered in Blender. What it's going to do is that it will take the camera and actually shift it around the focus point just to create more samples to actually create that kind of blur. It's more effective if you have corners, for example, where you have things that are obscured. For example, you have a very bright point that is right behind something. With that kind of blur, because of the focus point, you might see a bit of that within the blur of what is in front, or vice versa. And pre-jitter actually compensate for that. But blurring, by telling it just give it a blur depending on the distance map. What you're going to get is something that sort of looks good, but you might have to patch, which I had to. So I'm going to bring it back. And that kind of blur here is not realistic. It's a very specific style, and the reasoning is that it's more supposed to look like a miniature, because if you go with a camera that has a very wide aperture compared to the actual scene, you're going to have things that look very blurry in the foreground. And actually, when you shoot miniatures and you want them to look not like miniatures but like an actual big set, you have to go with something very tiny as an aperture and a lot of light, or a lot of time to expose that light. So the film itself, you're going to have an image that looks sharp and doesn't look grainy. So it's kind of the thing that goes like that, because you basically expose. But in this case, since it was supposed to look purposefully tiny, because the scene within the context, I want to show vignettes of life in Ponyville, and with that I wanted to actually make it something that felt small and cozy. So I think that really helped. So go with that, and then since it's supposed to be in the rain, as I was talking about earlier, I have layers of rain that I add. I had the reflection on the ground where you see all those spots. It's actually a bump map where I basically tell to, instead of reflecting what's right in front, I actually give it a fake angle. And the map itself is just generated with noise, just a map where it basically have round edges. And then I can add, just to make it more convincing. It doesn't follow exactly, but the rain footage that is just added on top just makes it feel like there's rain hitting the water to make it reflect. I also added, made it more shiny things around it, because you have things that are wet, so there's a layer of wetness on top. So everything just looks a bit more wet like that. So I can add all of those layers. There's one on top of that one as well, because you catch it within the focus of the camera. You have a layer of rain that drops because you have the drip, just dripping because of course you have the rain. You have that pre-comp, which is a layer of rain that I add on top. It's a bit tricky to get because the rain goes really fast, so it streaks. You don't want to make them too bright as well because you have taken the GTA remaster, where they made the rain way too white and way too opaque. It made it feel like there was some milk thrown everywhere. So then you go with the rain everywhere, like this. There's also, it's not the most realistic thing because it implies it's filmed with a camera, but there's droplets, and it's just footage of droplets on a plate, completely black, and I just add it. I added some displacement as well, but that's it. Then there's a filter that just abstracts everything to make it look a bit more cartoony. It's called Cartoon. Back in the days I used Smart Blur, so that way all the high frequency details just look a bit too rough. Just made it look a bit out of the style, were just gone. So you'd still have some details like that rock, but if you disable it, yeah, you can see a bit more sharpness. I'm actually rendering at quarter resolution because I wanted to render. And then you have some camera lens distortion to make it look a bit more, bit less static. So you have this, and then there's a layer color correction. And I think I didn't forget anything. There we go. And don't have all the. Okay, I only have 5 frames left because the composition is 250 frames, which is a bit above 10 seconds. And the thing with that is that the whole shot only lasts maybe 9, but I realized I need a lot more footage just in case I need some editing room. They call it handles sometimes, and I just call it more footage. And that way. And I'm gonna save just to be sure. And then I can go and actually preview the plate. I only have 3 minutes left, so I don't have much time for questions. Although I'll be in the main hall to talk to people if people are interested. And you can see it right now. There's still no leg animation because an hour to talk about it and actually do it is not a lot, which that happens. But at least you get a good idea. Like the animation of legs, it's really, really straightforward. Let's go with the pre-done cycles. In the show, what they did in a lot of cases, that if they had walk cycles, they would just reuse the ones they already made, because why recreate something that is already effective? And it's pretty straightforward. You have the leg that just slides back and then goes up and then goes down, and you can see it's not perfect, the curve that the leg goes to go up to make it different from going down, but in this case it's mostly just going point to point. In this case it looks fine. So you have this, and you can actually go with in my case here, instead of going with the speed of the legs, because it's at 24 frames per second, you have predefinite speed, and the ponies are always going to go with that exact speed, unless it's a custom one. And in this case, since I'm going to move with deformers that are not baked, what I can actually go is the actual speed of the shot. So I'm going to have this with the and what I'm going to have to do also, since there's a perspective shift, is just a shift in the x-axis, just to add some motion. And that's it. I have less than a minute, so I hope you had a good panel. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will go with, I think, Brony Trivia 2. Trivia 2. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you around.